My name is Richard Costello, known as Richie Costello, I suppose, among my military friends and family. I joined the army in November 1987. I served 28 and a half years and I left in April 2016. I was medically boarded out below army medical standards with a back injury.
Which trip did you take Lariam on?
I went to Liberia with the 94th Battalion, UNMIL, and that was with the lads from the East, the 2nd Eastern Brigade, and that was the trip that I took Lariam on.
When did you start to notice any kind of difference in your mannerisms?
The first effect that I found from Larium was, I suppose, it was hard not to. It was the vivid dreams. And they weren't just dreams, they were nightmares. There were things that in my normal daily life I wouldn't even speak about. Some of the dreams even, they were quite cruel because the dream would be so vivid you could almost reach out and touch someone in the dream, not like a normal dream where when you're dreaming you nearly know you're dreaming, if you get me gist. But these dreams that you'd have would be that you were at home, that you weren't even in Africa, that you were actually back at home, only to wake up out of it and realise you were still there. Every Wednesday I used to take the tablet at 2 o'clock. I did. That's all the NCOs that were in my tent. We took the tablets at the same time. It was more or less just to remind each other, make sure we did what we were told. And within a couple of hours you'd have this burning sensation all the way down your trachea, down there, like really bad indigestion, really bad heartburn, and that could last for anything up to 2-3 days. It could immediately after taking the tablet. The sleep loss, it was horrible because you were so busy over there, and just not being able to sleep, to wake up out of these nightmares and stuff like that, and to experience that, like you needed a lot of food on board over there because you were expending a lot of energy, and it was very hard to eat and stuff like that, and that was once a week for a couple of days, so it didn't help. Between that, sleep, eat, pain, upset, that was the immediate effect that I noticed.
How long did you take Lariam for?
We were told to take Lariam a month before we went out to Liberia. I see people in the media and that say that there was a screening process prior to taking Lariam. Well, if there was, I escaped that because it never came near me. I was never screened for Lariam. I was never asked if I had any objection to taking Lariam. I was told I had to take Lariam, and I had to take Lariam for a month before I went out, to take it for the entire time in theatre, and for a month after coming home. They were the instructions we got. We were told if we didn't take it, we would not travel. We got one briefing on it from the doctor who was going to travel overseas with us. I can't remember the man's name. He's a young doctor, an Irish lad. And we were in the Curragh, and I think we were doing the dismount course at the time in the Curragh for the MOAGs. And we were all gathered in. The doctor came out and he started talking to us about Lariam. Now, the way he was talking to us about Lariam was how we must take it, when we must take it, how important it was that we take it. He did say that if you had a bad reaction to it, we'll say medically, now that would be if it was causing illness or something like that, that they would look into giving an alternative. At the end of his brief he asked was there any questions, and nobody said anything, but me being me, I put my hand up and I asked him what he was going to take in theatre, and he wouldn't answer me.
You know what the other tablet was?
The word on the street at the time was that the tablet for the commissioned personnel on the trip was to be Doxy. And it was a daily tablet, it was, and it was supposed to be a much milder tablet with less side effects, but it was not a given option to any enlisted member who applied to go to Liberia at that time.
How has Lariam affected you since you started taking it?
Well, I've told you about the effects in theatre, in the mission area. But when I came home, I had two young kids. One of them I had left behind. He was only 18 weeks old when I left. And that took a lot out of me to do that. It was very, very difficult to do that. It was the first time. I'd been in Lebanon 3 times previous to that, but I was a young single man then. It was very, very tough leaving kids behind and leaving my wife at the time behind. It was very, very tough. I found that when I came home, I couldn't settle. I couldn't sleep. I was out training all the time because I had done a lot of training in Liberia. I'd lost nearly 5 stone in Liberia. That was through the heat as well, I suppose. I found myself detaching myself from them. I found little things, whereas we'd say things that I would have considered trivial before I took Larium, now they were monumental. They were huge. Little things. I'd have temper explosions. I would. I'd wake up in the mornings, I'd be grumpy, I wouldn't want to know anyone, didn't want to know anything about what was going on. Somebody could be talking to me about something that was quite important. Say my wife could be telling me about the kids. I was off somewhere else in my mind. I wasn't even listening to that. I started drinking very heavily. Very heavily. It caused a lot of problems, naturally. It did. It was completely unfair on herself and on the children. I didn't care. I kept going. Couple of mates of mine offered to talk to me about it. I fell out with them. I did. In work, I became very argumentative. Now, don't get me wrong, I would have always been opinionated. I would have always been one, I suppose, to put my hand up and say, well, maybe this isn't right. But I found myself taking a more aggressive stance on that, confronting people, confronting them aggressively. Whereas before that, I wouldn't have been that type of person, you know what I mean? Needless to say, my marriage fell apart. I just walked out the door. I thought that it was the only way that I could offer my children a decent upbringing, in that they weren't going to be brought up in a war zone. And the war zone that was mainly caused by my behaviour and my then wife's objection to my behaviour, and justifiably so, because I wouldn't have put up with that either. So I left. And I left the 2 young kids. I did. And that took a lot out of me because I didn't get to see my kids. Again, I started drinking heavier. Socially, I excluded myself from a lot of people. I wouldn't call to anybody's house. I wouldn't visit people. If I was invited to an event, I'd do my best to get out of it. I did. I didn't want to know anyone. I didn't. You know, again, the sleep deprivation, it took an awful lot out of me. It did. Couldn't sleep at night. If I was sleeping at night, I was having bad dreams. Dreams about stuff that could never happen to me and did never happen to me, but dreaming about stuff like that. And I just learned, I suppose, to talk to people about it. I spoke to my friends about it, some very close friends, and a couple of them told me, you know, you want to wise up, you're going off the rails here, you know what I mean? That kind of a thing. But I was doing a lot of training, and at one stage I had to do an annual medical shortly after it, and I ended up getting admitted to Cavan General Hospital with a heart problem. The doctor told me that I had a valve in my heart that was working harder than it should. And I had never in my life had heart issues. Never. I was very, very fit. Like I say, when I came home, I was 5 stone light. I was very, very fit. And that put me on a step back for a long time. But it also put me under the eye of the military authorities, because they put me under the eye. I got the all clear eventually from the heart issue, but I felt that I was being, maybe it was paranoia, maybe not, but I felt that I was being unfairly scrutinised, and that maybe I was trying to be a bit of a bluffer kind of thing, because I had to take it so easy. I was put on light duties for a period of time until the investigations into the heart were sorted out, and thankfully they were.
Did you let the army know that you were suffering from this?
I did a repat medical after I came home, and a young commandant, I'm not going to say his name, he sat across from me in the medical aid post in Cavan at the time when Cavan was open, and he checked my heart, he checked my blood pressure, breathing, flexibility, all the stuff that they check on an annual medical. And he made reference to the fact that I had taken Larium, and he asked me, do you have any side effects that you know of? I told him about not being able to sleep. I told him about nightmares and stuff like that. I told him I was probably getting short-tempered. Another big one was short-term memory loss. And he said, what do you mean? So I explained it to him that normally, and especially as an NCO, and especially in Liberia as an NCO, you were given an awful lot of responsibility. Like, you were in charge of your section, you were in charge of all their equipment, we'd say, when you went out on the ground. You had to make sure that the lads had stuff together, and they were good lads, you know what I mean, don't get me wrong. But the onus was still on you to check that stuff. So as a result of that, you would have a big checklist. You had to write, well, I had to write everything down by the end of the trip. In the beginning of the trip, I was fine. The officer or the sergeant would tell me, right, Richie, you need to do A, B and C. I would do A, B and C. And maybe D, E and F would be added onto it. And that, to me, didn't pose any problems. I was well able to cope with that. But by the end of the trip, if it went beyond A, I had to write it down. I had a notebook in my pocket, left pocket in my combats all the time. And the minute I'd be told to do anything, I'd just have to say, much to my own embarrassment, sorry, will you just hold on a minute? I'm going to write this down. And people would look at you as if you were just an idiot. Or at least you were made to feel like that. And maybe they didn't mean to make you feel like that either, you know what I mean? But they looked at you as if, Jesus Christ, it's only a couple of things. Here he is writing them down. If I hadn't written them down, I would not have remembered them. And to this day, my short-term memory is completely shot. We could have a conversation off camera today about the fact that this is on camera. Yes, it's something that's important. It's something that's an important part of my day today. But if we had this conversation sitting down in the sitting room or sitting in a pub or whatever, and I mentioned certain key points in it, and perhaps tomorrow you were to say to me, do you remember, Richie, you said this? I'd be there, no. And I could quite possibly go as far as denying that I said it at all. I could, and that happens in my personal life to this day. It does, and it can cause turmoil. It can, because things will happen. You might have been told to arrange something, or you've been told there's something coming up for the children, like that, and you're like, yeah, no problem, I'll do that. If I don't make a note of that somewhere, it's gone, and it won't happen. It won't happen. And my partner could come up and say to me, well, Richie, have you got that organised? Are we good to go? What are you talking about? Well, do you remember last week I told you? No. Well, I did tell you. No, you didn't. And I would dig my heels in, maybe only to remember at a later stage, yeah, I should have done that. I do remember now. You know what I mean? And that's that.
Has the army looked after you since you've left?
I haven't looked for any help from the army since I left. I have self-managed. I have a good partner, a good family, I have good support, I have good friends, and friends that I can talk to, friends I can confide in. I haven't looked to the army to support me since I left, because they didn't support me when I was in. For a man to tell me, and I'm sorry, I didn't finish that story about the commandant on the medical. When I explained all those things to him about the way I was affected, I was 37 years of age at that stage. And he turned around and he told me, it's probably because of your age. And I just laughed at him. And I said, I'm 37, sir, I'm not 87. I couldn't believe that was a medical professional's response to me. That was me, in a way, reaching out to him. It was me telling him. He had asked me a question. I'm a very private person. I'm a very proud person. I'd be too proud to go knocking on someone's door looking for help. You know what I mean? Unless I knew that person really, really was going to help me or whatever. To make that initial move to me, and even to say that to him, was a huge thing at a time where there was a lot of reports coming back from people suffering from Larium effects. And I felt that him saying that to me was a party line that he was taken from somewhere else, and it was damage limitation. And it was, in other words, shut up and leave that. But that was the end of that conversation that day. He didn't write it in my medical file to my knowledge, because if he had, maybe perhaps then I could have been referred on to somebody, maybe a psychologist or somebody, you know what I mean, that may have been able to help me or to properly diagnose my short-term memory loss and anger issues. But no, absolutely nothing.
Are you aware that as a veteran from the Irish Defence Force, did you have an opportunity to ring in the BPSSO and get mental health services through them free?
No. No, I've never been made aware of that. I didn't know about that at all.
Would you have any message for anyone else who is suffering from the Larry effects?
Yes. My message to anyone, particularly people who are serving, is look for the help now. Don't be afraid of consequences. You've done nothing wrong. You've done what you were told. You've done what was prescribed to you. You've taken what was prescribed to you. You've taken it as it was prescribed to you. And if you have a side effect because of all that, well then you've done nothing wrong. Go to the people who made you take it. Go to the people who made you take it, because obviously they will know of the side effects. And if they don't, well then they shouldn't be giving you that stuff. But if you've taken it and you are suffering side effects, don't be too proud like me to go and say to your BMO or your medical orderly or even one of the medics, look, I need a bit of help here. This is going wrong, that is going wrong, the other is going wrong. Because it's too late when you bring it into your home, and it's too late when you bring it into your private life, which you will, inevitably. But if you know that there's a help support out there for you, don't be afraid of consequences, because consequences are there. But if you are firm enough in any resolve and you know you've done nothing wrong, well, the consequences won't bother you and will not affect you. It's just the thoughts of them. And there is help out there if you look for it. Don't wait like me until you're gone and feel bitter about it. It's too late then.
And would you have anything to say to the medical professionals that had signed off on the use of Larium?
I would say to the medical professionals that signed off on the use of Larium, shame on you. Shame on every single one of you for what you have done, for the lives that have been taken as a consequence of people committing suicide after taking that poison, for people who have been left nervous wrecks, homeless, without friends, without anything, without any sense of quality of life. I say shame on you. And it's a pity that you just don't give them the drug that was given to the commissioned people. Why should there be a difference? We're all human at the end of the day. Give the drug that has the least side effects. Larium has been proven to cause devastating side effects. There have been court cases about it. I can't say any more about that. But there have been court cases, and I'm sure there will be more.